Hi everybody, it's Meredith. I'm an instructor here at Krav Maga Houston, and today I have Trea with me. He is a second degree Black Belt Instructor and the director of our youth program. Recently, we have been contacted by several corporations, schools, and private groups to come in and provide training on situational awareness. And this is something that Trea is really passionate about. And honestly, when we have a really short amount of time with the group, this is probably the most beneficial thing that they can learn and take with them. So I just wanted to provide some of the highlights of that training to you guys, hopefully keep you a little bit safer. So when it comes to situational awareness, where do you think the majority of people fail?
Well, I think the number one thing is that people seem to forget that there are people out there walking around everywhere you go that don't share your values, may or may not be sane, and may or may not be sober. We know that 50% right now of all robberies in major cities are cell phone related.
Wow.
And if you think about that, there's got to be a reason for that. And the reason is twofold. One, cell phones are valuable, right? Our cell phones these days are costing anywhere between $500 and $1,500, right? So they have a street value. The second, cell phones make a person an easier target, right? Because it makes a person more distractible.
Now, recently we've done a lot of trainings with kids and sports groups or private schools, and I think most kids, their reaction when they hear "stay off your cell phone" is just to roll their eyes.
Yeah, and they hear it all the time. I think the biggest deal is to give them parameters, right? It's not about stay off your cell phone all the time. It's about when should you be on your cell phone and how aware should you be while you're on it, ultimately, right? So one of the things that we recommend is that when you're in a transitional space, that being that you're going from one building to your car, from your car to another car, from one building to another building, whatever it may be, those are transitional spaces. And in those spaces, you should be aware. And that means stay off your cell phone. That means put your cell phone away so that you're not still advertising.
Now, you mentioned earlier the 50% of robberies, was it, are now cell phone related, and that's a trend that's called apple picking.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it kind of runs the gamut in the sense that if you're lucky, a person will come up and grab your cell phone out of your hand. I've seen some people where they're standing on the edge of a curb and a car drives up. Someone gets out of the car and grabs their phone, jumps in the car, and they drive away. I've also seen some situations where a person has the phone in their hand and a person comes up and hits them to take their phone, right? So you're lucky if the first one happens to you. You just don't know who you're going to get, what type of predator that you have coming at you. You just don't know if they plan to cause damage in the process or if they just want to take your phone.
Now, most people would think, okay, they want my phone, they can have my phone. But this distraction of being on your phone becomes a lot more serious. So I'm just going to introduce the video. I'll have it up on the screen. But we actually did a training last year. We do it every year for college students that are here in the summer. And they have multiple hours in training where they're doing situational awareness. There's a physical component. It was the first day of this course. All of these girls were here for the first time and they had never met any of us, and we did a little bit of an experiment to really emphasize the importance of being off of your cell phone. And it's not just your phone, but it could potentially be your life. So if you want to talk through that.
Yeah, so I had a gun that I put in the waistband of my pants, and that meant that the handle was exposed. You could clearly see the handle of the weapon, and it was against the backdrop of a gray shirt, right? So it was a black handle against the contrast of a gray shirt. And I hadn't met the girls yet, and I came through the front door, walked through the lobby, and of course they were all on their cell phones. Only one person in the group even bothered to look up and even notice that I walked through the door, right? She looked up and made eye contact, didn't see the weapon, looked right back down at her phone, right? So there's got to be this distinction between looking and seeing. You got to know what to look for, first and foremost, and when you look, you actually have to see what it is that you're looking for.
Process the information.
And this also brings up the issue of, we recommend that in transitional spaces, people are off of their phones. But that doesn't mean that you're perfectly safe inside a place, right? Those girls were in a new facility. They had never been here before. It's a new place for them. They don't know what to expect, but as soon as they got here, they immediately stuck their faces in their phones and were completely oblivious to what was going on around them. If I had bad intentions, I could have hurt and or killed everybody in the lobby, And they would have never known anything was going to happen until they heard the first shot, because they were that unaware of what was going on, right? So part of our mission is to bring awareness to those types of things and make it to where we're not like that anywhere that we go. And what that means is, again, transitional spaces, your phone is put away. You don't have it in your hand, it's put away in your pocket or your purse. And it also means that when you're in public spaces, that you, although you may be on your phone, that you occasionally look up and see what's going on, that you have all senses working, right? That you may be visually looking at your phone, but you're listening to what's going on around you. But you're still occasionally looking up just to make sure that everything is in order, that everyone's behaving according to baseline and what you expect in that context.
What am I looking for in terms of a behavior that someone might be exhibiting that I might take as a concern?
Sure. Yeah, so we call this the baseline, right? So no matter where you go, there's a baseline set of behaviors. So you go to a restaurant, there's a baseline set of behaviors that everybody expects. There's going to be people that take on certain roles at the front door. There's going to be people seated. There's going to be people standing. And what you're looking for at any given time is anybody that's behaving outside that baseline. So one of my best examples, I think, is that it was public transportation. This was in San Francisco. And it was one of the trolley cars or subway car. And there's like 20 people seated, and there's one man standing up, and he's in the back of the car, and he's got his back to the wall. He's got both hands in his pockets. He's got a heavy jacket on. It's too heavy for the weather, right? And he's rocking back and forth, and he's making faces. Now, any one of those things wouldn't be cause for concern. So you see somebody wearing a heavy jacket with their hands in their pockets, doesn't necessarily mean anything. You see one person standing up out of 21, doesn't necessarily mean anything, but when you start putting these behaviors together, it's a cluster of behaviors. And it's the cluster of behaviors that we're concerned about, right? And look, if you see these cluster of behaviors, right, this particular individual showed like 5, 6 different behaviors that would be of concern. Doesn't mean that you have to say anything to this person. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is being aware of them. We're not even aware, right? And then the second level of it is, it doesn't mean that you have to do anything. Maybe the best thing is to do nothing. And that may be that you get on to the next train. You're not even on the train that he's on, right? It may be that you decide that you're not going to sit close to him. You're going to sit close to the front where the exit is, just in case something happens, right? But you don't suppress the bells that are going off. They're saying, look, there's a cluster of behaviors here that are a problem. You should probably pay attention to this. You should attend to that. Doesn't mean that you have to do anything to that person. Doesn't mean that you need to say anything to that person. That's not what we're talking about. We're just talking about being aware, first and foremost, and then having a plan secondarily, so that if something happens, that you know what to do.
And in that example, he ended up killing someone on the train.
Yeah, he actually, before he pulled the trigger, he drew the weapon 3 times. And no one on the train saw the weapon. No one knew anything was about to go down until he pulled the trigger.
And they were all on their phones?
They were all on their phones.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, our discussions with small groups in terms of situational awareness is not only being aware of what you're doing that may make it more likely that you're identified as an easy victim, right? But also, what are the behaviors that the would-be attacker is engaging in that are called pre-violence indicators? So they already have a plan. They know what they're going to do, and before they execute that plan, certain nervous behaviors start to be exhibited, right? And the question is, what are those behaviors, and how do you identify those? So we go through those, and one of those behaviors that is really common is things like grooming, right? So they'll start rubbing their head, they may scratch their nose, right? Whatever it may be. There may be other indicators that they have a weapon. They may be patting their waistband, things like that. There's a whole list of these behaviors that everybody should know, and you have to practice actually seeing them. And then we have to get to the point to where once we identify those behaviors and we notice that that person has identified us as a would-be victim, that how do we address that? What do you say? What do you not say? What do you do with your hands to speak non-verbally? What do you not do with your hands? How do you do those 2 things? Indicate to someone that you don't want any trouble, non-verbally, as well as verbally, but also at the same time keep proper space between you and that person. And what is the proper space, right? So all these things have to be practiced. You can't just discuss it. You have to actually practice it in front of the room with a partner in a variety of scenarios in order for these things to actually be instilled in you and to become second nature.
Yeah. And that second nature is so important because you also have the chemical cocktail going on of the adrenaline. Even in a training setting, it just fires up. And we've had people that have trained for years that have gone through the FAST seminars, and they say, I didn't think I was going to get tunnel vision, and I did.
That's right.
So it's really important to train not just the physical skills, but these recognition, the verbal, all of that is it's all self-defense.
Well, look, the goal with the physical skills, right, is that you train in Krav Maga, you get fit, right, and you have a certain skill set that if something happens, that you know what to do on a physical level. But really the most important thing is that you learn those skills and that you never have to use them. And the way that you never have to use them is that you learn all these other things, right? That's the only way to do it. So you learn to be more situationally aware so that you're less likely to be selected as a victim. You learn to be able to de-escalate, right? And you practice that under stress, right? Like you said, the chemical cocktail hits you and your hands are shaking and your voice is shaking, but you're having to talk them down anyway. And we can evoke all that in a training context. And the deal is that you evoke that stress response, and you learn to function through that stress response. And then let's say everything goes wrong. You were situationally aware, but you got blindsided anyway because you don't have eyes in the back of your head. Somebody ends up attacking you. That you have that same chemical cocktail, it hits you really quick, but you be able to use that to your advantage to win that scenario.
Awesome. Well, do you have anything else that you would like to add before we close?
I don't think so.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.